Speaking of things that don't hit the radar screen often, the whistleblower, the notion of whistleblowers, people who they have a concern, it never gets out there. This week, Katie, there's a website called fairwhistleblower.ca, and when we're looking at it now, obviously one of these, this is just a web page. What's important about this?
Well, what's important is in theory, this will give whistleblowers or people that want to support or find out what's going on as far as whistleblowers in the Canadian government, this will give them an opportunity to have a place where they can share their stories, where they can, the idea being that if you go as public as, if you're going to go as public as possible and hope that the resulting attention, both media and otherwise, will give you a protection from retaliation that might not be the case if you were sort of doing it in the dark. So in that sense, the internet has been a remarkable tool, or it should, at least in theory, kind of level the playing field a little, so that governments aren't able to necessarily, or corporations or anyone else who might be subject to whistleblower, aren't necessarily as able to exercise retribution without it being found out.
David, you called this on your blog the most dangerous website in Ottawa. Why?
Well, for two reasons. The first is, the current government's really run a campaign on accountability, and I think this website exposes the fact that there are definitely times, even still today, even after they pass whistleblower legislation, that public servants sometimes are actually not safe when they step forward, and when they're operating what I think is the larger public interest. So they're operating, they're expressing a concern that they have that the taxpayers should be worried about, but maybe their bosses don't want us to know about. And so this site exposes that and gives them an opportunity to voice their opinion. The second reason is I think it sends a really chilling message to public servants. It shows what the personal and professional cost can be if you step forward and show the world that something going on in your vicinity where you work is not going according to the books.
But how do you deal with public servants who speak out? I mean, listen, they have an obligation also to the place of their work. I mean, it's not just do that.
They do have an obligation, although, and I mean, this came up repeatedly during Gomery, actually Justice Gomery, when he came out with his recommendations. One of the things that they really looked at was if rules are being broken or if laws are being broken, a public servant who wants to report that, who wants to, as they say, blow the whistle on that, should actually be able to have protection from future retaliation. And that is something that, as David mentioned, this government, when they were in opposition, really campaigned heavily on that. I don't think you'll find many people out there, many public servants or many advocates for better whistleblowing protection, who will say that they came anywhere close to doing what they promised. And in fact, this sort of chilling climate that you see has, in a sense, I think, almost gotten worse. There's a real feeling of paranoia within the public service over what would happen if they came forward. Because of what it's remarkable. If you call departments, departmental spokespeople all have to channel communications through Privy Council. Everything goes straight through the center. It's a much tighter communications. It means people are much less likely to speak out. Oh, absolutely. We don't even notice it anymore because it's become so much a part of everyday life. I mean, last week when Hannah Thibodeau was telling you about the story she did, do you remember, on the Hill employees who were laid off and were losing their benefits as a result of prorogation? Well, do you remember she said that she was trying to get some of them to go on camera. They wouldn't do it because they were worried that if they did, even though there's no rule saying they can't do that, that they wouldn't necessarily be hired back. And that is a feeling that goes straight through the public service.
And Evan, I think that's why the Colvin story was so huge, is because it was finally an example of someone who was coming forward and expressing what I think a lot of public servants are feeling, which is that the environment just simply isn't safe anymore to speak out.
Yeah, but I just want to be careful on the Richard Colvin, because he's not qualified.
He's not a whistleblower.
He's not a whistleblower.
He
was called forward by the Military Police Complaints Commission and by the committee, of course, to testify. So it is different. I'm not saying there's not a chilling environment that he's felt.
The thing is, that should have actually given him more protection. Because he was subpoenaed to testify. He was subpoenaed under, the legal process. He should have been able to, and he should be able to go forward and say what it is that he has to say without any fear of retribution. He's not sort of sticking his neck out. He's just responding and doing his job. And the fact that he's now, engaged in this, I was reading, the submission on privilege today, and the government trying to declare certain material that he has privilege on, somewhat, well, it's a really interesting legal argument. But I think that's, he's not a whistleblower, but in a sense, he should have actually had less of a problem than someone who just comes forward.
And of course, he did have some debate this week as to getting his legal fees paid for, and that was interesting.